Hi everybody, welcome to today's webinar. My name is McKay Allen. I am the Inbound Marketing Manager at Log My Calls, and we're really excited you're here today. I want to give you a little bit of background before we jump into today's webinar with Matt Gorniak of G2 Crowd, which we're really excited about today, honestly, because it's an independent review site. They have a ton of good insight, and we're really excited they're here, and they've got some great stuff. So first, by way of introduction, Log My Calls is a business software that allows marketers to track which ads, campaigns, and keywords generate phone calls. And then additionally, it actually analyzes conversations using speech recognition technology to pull out data like, was the caller a good lead or a bad lead? Were they price sensitive? Were they not price sensitive? Did they buy something? Did they set an appointment? So all of these things we extract based on the words and phrases actually said on the call. It's a great tool used by a lot of different enterprises, small businesses, as well as agencies across North America. So it's a really good tool. Now the next question we're asked always is, why do we do webinars? We've done about 80 webinars in the last 12 months. And the reason is because our audience is marketers. And so we want to provide useful marketing content. So you can see we've got today's webinar here. Next week we have a webinar with Michael Fleischner about local search, as well as Tim Ash, who's the founder of Conversion Conference, about advanced landing page optimization. And you can see all of our past webinars are actually here, so you can watch them. So we encourage you to go to our site, watch those webinars, and register for our upcoming webinars. This will be recorded, this webinar today with Matt, and it'll be on this library, logmycalls.com/webinar, right after the presentation is completed. So as soon as the video will render, I should say. So as we said, the webinar is being recorded. If you have questions during today's presentation, write those questions in the little question bar, and I'll address those to Matt at the conclusion of his presentation. And again, we're really excited that he's here and that you're here today. One more word before we conclude. If you are interested in learning more about Log My Calls, December is a good month to buy, because if you buy this month, we send you a free Kindle Fire HD. So that's cool. Give that to your kids for Christmas, and you'll help your business and your kids. So with that, let's introduce Matt. We're again really excited to have him today. He's one of the co-founders of G2 Crowd. He has worked in the software space for essentially his entire career. One of the companies he was involved with sold to Oracle for a chunk of change, and then he also led Big Machines. It was one of the fastest growing companies in the world. Grew that company from just a couple $1 million in revenue to over $50 million in revenue. G2 Crowd, Matt can explain a little more about it, but it's a business software review site. It allows you to get independent reviews from customers and then analysis that you can use to make better decisions about which business software to use. So with that, Matt, I'll turn it over to you, give you control of the screen, and let me make sure you have access to everything. All right. I think you should. There you are. I see you. So Matt, go ahead, sir.
Thanks, McKay. Thanks for the intro. Can you see the screen okay and everything?
Yeah, it looks great.
Great, thank you. So the topic for today is 5 questions to ask when buying business software. And before doing that, I wanted to also share 5 predictions for next year, because they kind of go hand in hand in what's changing in enterprise software selling and buying. And as McKay mentioned, my background is in enterprise software, sales, alliances, marketing, as a vendor and also as a buyer. As the company, as Big Machines grew fairly rapidly, we were also buyers of enterprise software, and also my prior experiences at GE, CAD, and EMC. And so if you look at that type of process, that's kind of where the idea behind G2 Crowd came, but about that a little bit later. So a couple things. 5 predictions. Why am I sharing that is because a couple things are happening. The buyers will have the upper hand in 2014 in enterprise software. And in the past, and actually in some cases still today, the vendors think that they have full control over demos, pricing, etc. And that's no longer the case. Now consumers are looking for access to online information about the product, pricing, potentially even wanting to purchase it online. And many vendors are playing into that, the progressive ones. And the point is really more the consumerization of enterprise B2B software is already happening, and in 2014 it's there. And to contrast this with, back to consumer again, that left picture here, I don't know who still goes to purchase a car and wanting to have the first educational session with the sales rep about the car. Typically, we all go in now knowing not only what model, what features, what options. We also know what price to pay. We're really going there just to buy. And so that's happening in enterprise software as well. The buyers will also not be the IT department. Traditionally, IT would drive the requirements gathering process, make decisions on vendor shortlists, would reach out to traditional analysts like Gartner, and combine sort of that shortlist analysis and then also implement the software. And things are very different now in 2014. Solutions can be successfully implemented by line of business, and there's thousands of examples of that already. The other point also is the line of business manager actually is the best one to know the requirements. I mean, there's no one better to know what needs to be fixed than the person living the process. And the buyers now, they're a very different breed of line of business executives. These are not executives and buyers that they're extremely savvy in IT and process. They don't just want to see a demo. They're going to ask questions about what's the administration look like? Show me the administration. Show me how you make me successful. Set up this product for me. Basically, very, very deep questions right away. And also, tell me about integration and so forth. Anyway, the point is, these are very educated buyers, and they're going to buy from the line of business. The other point also, number 3, is these buyers will not wait for traditional analyst reports, which basically is, we're in a real-time world, and back to consumer as well. We want information now, and so the attitude is, hey, tell me everything you know now. So give me all the data, give it to me now, real time, and I'll do the filtering. I don't want to just rely on one person's opinion of a certain product. I'd like to know lots of people's opinions. I'd like to know what the data out there says about it, and I'm in control. I'd like to make the decision about what's important to me. And that's kind of the point here about the social aspects of it, which is, what are my peers doing? And this is, again, the contrast is consumer. That ship has sailed in the consumer world. When the buyers are looking to make decisions, as I mentioned, they no longer want to look at static reports that are out of date the minute they're printed, potentially also non-inclusive of hot up-and-coming vendors, if you will. But also, what are my peers thinking? What is the discussion happening on these products in the marketplace right now? Because we know in this world, 3 months from now, it could be a different story altogether. And buyers will look on online review sites like G2 Crowd when making purchasing decisions. And why is that? Again, the consumer comparison is exactly that. That's how we're wired now. When I make a decision on what hotel to purchase or to get reservations with, I don't ask a travel agent. Actually, I don't ask my friends either, because when you travel a lot, I don't have enough friends in enough places. So I go to a review site. And that's the natural instinct, is what are my friends doing? And if you kind of run out of friends, then the next best things are review sites. And that's not a surprise. Nielsen research confirms that online review sites are the #2 most trusted form of advertising or consumption by the buyers of advice. So these are all trends kind of playing into 2014 in a big way. And that's really good to keep in mind from a buyer side as well as from a vendor side. So what are the 5 questions to ask before buying software? I think the first one is, which review site should you be really looking at? And that's kind of important because there's a still emerging field, a lot of review sites out there. And remember also, you're not buying pizza or getting a room for $100. For many of you, this is a decision that could be a career maker. Picking the right vendor for the right project is wonderful. You've solved a business problem. You are providing successful business benefits to your company. That's great. But there's also a downside to it. And I don't want to overplay the downside, but the point is there's more at stake than buying a lunch. And so you should be very careful in looking at, what is my review source? And so the first thing you should look at is, what's the purpose of the site? And we're all very savvy now from the consumer world. So is the purpose of the site really to help me with unbiased and trusted advice? Or does it seem like it's kind of pointing me in all sorts of weird ways that may have a different agenda? The other point is, look at the underpinnings, which is the review itself. Can I verify very quickly that the reviewer is trusted? At G2 Crowd, we use LinkedIn, which is actually quite unique. So the idea here is, here's a review example, that not only can I click on that little eye symbol, I can very quickly see the profile of that reviewer. And frankly, I would even suggest a quick sample size. Pick some of these profiles, go into LinkedIn, double check them. They check out, great. At G2 Crowd, that's how that works. And now you know these are trusted reviewers that have actually put their authority on the line sharing these reviews. The other point also is, do you have easy comparison tools to help you with your search? At G2 Crowd, we've got 8,000 users, over 14,000 reviews, so quite a bit of data to dig through. And frankly, on that screenshot again, if you click on Read More, you could see that typically we have 30 to 40 questions that our users are answering. So a lot of data to do a lot of research before you contact anyone. And also, back to the community, there's comments here as well. There's 15 comments that personally I would dig into if I was doing research. And the reason we picked this review is because it's the most helpful for this specific vendor. And I can see that because there's 22 upvotes from the community. So pretty powerful energies here at work that help you find the most relevant information and help you in your search. So what's the second question that you should do? Now that G2 Crowd, you're looking at it, hey, that looks really trusted. This makes sense. They're trying to help me make a better decision. Actually, a plug, I would say, contribute also review. As you're seeing benefits from this, do write one, because that's the foundation of G2 Crowd. You give a little, you take a little. But anyway, the second point then is, look at the two main axes before you start exploring. This is an example of our grid for CRM software. So in this case, we have scale and satisfaction as the two axes. Scale is basically the vendor's resources behind the product, and satisfaction is how, are they making their customers happy and satisfied. And that's important because the scale is kind of an individual decision. There's really no right answer, and there's different views on that, what kind of size of vendor you want to work with. And like I said, that's kind of up to you, but the beauty is you can quickly see it through unbiased data, what the scale is. But then satisfaction is obviously a pretty obvious thing. Before you start exploring, we would suggest do it with the vendors that have a high customer sat, are to the right of the average, which is the line in the middle. And the beauty of that is, this way you can find gems, you can find new products, or validate the products that you already know about. And the beauty is, you're doing that and not wasting time on products that potentially don't take care of the customers, and you don't want to find it out later in your shortlisting. So anyway, these are the two ways to start your exploration. And then go deep. And that's very, very important, because a lot of products have hundreds of reviews. As I mentioned, some have 40 questions answered. And at G2 Crowd, we've got many tools that can help you look at strengths and weaknesses of the platforms, see if they match up with your requirements. Potentially it helps you generate requirements. Create a list. And the other point is that there's lots of tools here to do that, and also color commentary. So start noting benefits, downsides against your requirements, or generate a requirements list from here. And back to tools again, then start comparing, and not just features, but also the vendors themselves. And what's really important about that is that before you even consider a short list, you need to make sure you're comfortable with 3 vendors at most. And the reason I'm suggesting that is because if you don't have 3 in mind, you probably haven't done your research well enough. And the reason is also, if you make it too broad, you're probably wasting your time and the vendor's time. And if it's not enough vendors, then you're not doing, a exploration type of exercise that probably you should be doing when looking at vendors. And again, many of our products listed in G2 Crowd have hundreds, 100 reviews, but frankly, even one with 20, that's plenty of data because the reviewers are opting in via LinkedIn. They're validated. We have very high Q&A on it, meaning there's no employees, no competitors that are doing reviews. And so these are trusted contributors, a lot of insight. And so as you have your list of 3, before you engage anyone, contact these contributors. At G2 Crowd, make it very easy. Here's an example of looking at the profile. And when you go into the pages, you see the most valuable up top. You can filter these, by the way, by roles, administrators, what have you, by size of companies. And then you click a button, Contact Us. So talk to your peers. Engage in conversation. It's also a great way to network. But most importantly, that's a direct path to also validate your assumptions, validate your research, and validate benefits, everything that you've tracked so far. And now that you've done that, here's the beauty of it. You are now engaging 3 vendors, and you're very empowered, you're very knowledgeable about what it is that you're looking for, how these vendors are matching your requirements. It's very efficient because these are the 3 vendors that are most likely to fulfill them. And now it's time to go deep and engage in demos and what have you. And by the flip side, the vendors are also very appreciative of your time because they're the 3 most likely to actually help you. And so no one's really wasting time here. It's time to go into the details. It's time for you to really make decisions on who is now the final vendor that can help you get your problem solved. So everyone wins from this empowered process in 2014. And part of what we're doing is we're making you aware that this exists, and there is 8,000 peers already on the site using it, contributing, and thousands more are coming to visit and benefiting from G2 Crowd. And with that, I can turn it over to Q&A if there is any.
Good stuff. That's great information. Yeah, there's a few questions we actually received via email prior, and then some questions that are being typed in now. So if you have those questions, everybody type those in. First, the question that everybody wants to know that we actually got a few times is, how do you guys make money? Who pays you? Does the company that appears on your site, does the reviewer pay? Like who? I think that's a question everybody asks with reviewing sites is how do you actually get paid?
Yep. So it's actually very simple. The research, so when we have no opinion on any products. We take the research and we bundle it up in reports. Those are available for purchase on the website as a buyer. Although I would say you can get quite a bit of benefit from going to the website for free. So it's a freemium model type of deal.
Yeah.
And you can get quite a bit by engaging, your peers. That's free. You can read a lot of reviews. The reports are sort of built for, I have to have a summary by Monday, and I really don't want to go through the time of tabulating everything, and I want it in a nice and sort of summary format. And that's where that comes in.
That's great.
And the other form also is certain vendors that are highly rated can actually purchase or license a trust mark from us. So we don't determine who ends up where, but when they are a leader or high performer, then they can essentially share that with the rest of the community, saying, I'm a high performer according to the G2 Crowd, or a leader. And that's sort of the 2 ways. But again, we have no input on where these vendors and products end up being. That's all driven through algorithm, math, and the cloud.
That's great, because I think that's one of the #1 things people want to know is like, for example, Top SEOs is a company that they list like top 10 vendors in various categories, but it's all pay to play. Right. So people don't realize the #1 company on that list paid more, which is why they're #1. They just simply chose to pay more than somebody who's #3. So anyway, that's really a great model because I think it allows you guys to make money on it, which is sort of the whole point of having a business. But then secondarily, it provides really useful data that you can trust because it comes from users that you verify. Here's a good question coming in right now from Lynn. He says, what are the top mistakes you see people make when they select software? Have you been able to sort of extract that data like, these people are doing this wrong, or was there a need you saw of mistakes people were making over and over, and that's why you created G2 Crowd? Or what are those mistakes, Matt?
No, so I'm really glad that question was asked. But by the way, to the first question also, I think you're very perceptive. That's kind of my first point of the top 5 things to do when buying software. Make sure you really look at the review website and how they're making money. It's for that reason also we created G2 Crowd, because there is an inherent benefit of people sharing their experience. Make sure it's trusted, it's quality. That's what we're all about. That's really our business model. And then good things happen. And there is a lot of stuff out there that is kind of a cottage industry that doesn't really add value. It just serves one purpose. And we want to disrupt it as well as traditional analysts, if you will. So the second question, and actually you kind of answered for me, McKay, it is based on being a vendor and a buyer. The entire process is stuck in the 1980s, and that's when we created G2 Crowd. The first sort of mistake is, well, it's easy to make that mistake if there's no G2 Crowd, because we saw companies spend 6 to 8 months, depends on size of company obviously, just generating a short list that was way too long and based on Googling and people attending random trade shows. So you start with a much bigger sample size, waste a lot of time on vendors that potentially, or products that don't even fit you, and that are, maybe it's their own scale, and potentially are not a good product. And so that's the starting point for this. We can condense it down to like a day or two. So to answer your question, it is basically, to summarize it, would be, if you don't do your research on G2 Crowd, you're making a big mistake, because there's hundreds of reviews, and if you really read through them carefully, there's a wealth of information there and people you can contact. And that's how you compress your shortlist process, and that's how you have confidence you select the right vendors.
That's great. We got really good questions coming in now. James asks, what if the vendor or type of software you're looking to buy does not have a substantial amount of information on the review side? And let me hop in before you answer this real quick, Matt. I think maybe an example would be, one of the examples anyway, would be Log My Calls. Like I think we just created our profile on there a few days ago, have 2 or 3 reviews, but it's certainly not the 50 or even 15 that you would want to have a a really good data set. So how would you respond to that, Matt? What if the software you're looking at buying or the area you're looking at considering doesn't have a ton of reviews that you can find?
Yeah, that's a really good point. So if you find, obviously, we're getting critical mass in that sense, but if I found Log My Calls interesting, I would contact you, McKay, or a sales rep. So obviously we have to prime the pump here as a buyer, and I would suggest that you have to get reviews in G2 Crowd. And I'm not suggesting this to be self-serving, but by virtue of having your customers be in this process, and I probably also would share, if there's other vendors in this space that have more data, I would point that out to you and say, hey, there is 10, 20 reviews of the other products. I'm learning more. Where are yours? The reason I'm saying it's not self-serving is because by your customers entering here, they are making themselves known. I can read their opinions without, sort of having to talk to anyone. And also, these are more people I can contact, as a peer-to-peer. And so that would be my call to action. And that's obviously not needed when there's critical mass in categories. But for the products where there aren't many, I would definitely do that as a buyer. Because otherwise, I kind of have to ask for references, maybe 2 or 3 directly from you, and that's fine. But if you had 20 of them and 30 in there that I can sort of contact at my choosing, that's actually better for me as a buyer. And my sense is, if I was buying software and I share it with you that that's what I need, you would probably act on it.
That's great. A couple more questions here, Matt. Let me go through these. Okay, so this individual asks if you could maybe just go through, for example, just to give people an example, a couple of sort of like your CRM matrix that you showed there, like where various CRMs rank, and sort of explain that matrix if you can. I think that was on a previous slide of where everybody was in sort of a grid. I think it's the CRM. Yeah, the CRM. Can you describe what this means, what we're looking at here, and how the matrix works with your algorithms? Describe that if you can, and then maybe a little bit of what goes into your algorithms as to how these companies are placed where they are placed on this graph.
Yep. No, I'm happy to do that. And on the website, I'd encourage you to go there as well, now or after the call. this is obviously real time in a sense. I mean, you can click into these logos and go right to the reviews underpinning them. So it's all about transparency. So if I clicked on Salesforce, for instance, I could see there's 500 something reviews. I don't know offhand right now, but there's more than 500 in there underpinning this. But these two axes are based on user reviews, social data. So it's pure math. And also the satisfaction curve is normalized. So it's a bell curve. But the input into scale, and we have it on the website also, clearly defined, is employees on LinkedIn dedicated to this product. So how many resources do you have working on this specific product? And then also some social data points, Google Trends, and Twitter followers of the brand, if you will. So that's a unbiased scale data that is not provided by anyone. That's extracted from the social web, if you will. The satisfaction in this specific case, satisfaction rating is based on over 1,000 reviews for all these vendors in here. And these reviews are in CRM, they're 70 questions deep. So each review, and that doesn't mean that everyone reviewed 70 questions, but there's an opportunity set of 70 questions down to the feature level for CRM, times over 1,000 reviewers, plus also social data that we pull in, again, Twitter, Google Trend. We have APIs to other web stores like Google Play. So a lot of data at play here. And when we combine all that, that's how these logos start basically, that's where they are. All math driven and user driven. And then this is the starting point, and then you click into these logos and then you see the underpinnings. And then you start seeing the reviews, who these reviewers are. You can filter there and go right to the root of these standings.
Great. And then give us an example of a paid report that someone could get about CRMs. What would that report look like? What would it have in it that you guys would provide?
Right. So the report is essentially a summary of all the data. So if you imagine again, over 1,000 reviewers, plus their demographics, plus 70 questions, down to the feature level. It's essentially a breakdown of here's the details behind the standings, here's what industries were covered, what sizes were covered. Feature examples would be how good are they in mobile, and not just individually, but compared to each other. So it's kind of down to that level. And these reports are typically 15 to 18 pages deep of summary of this data. So a very nice, elegant way to have it all summarized in addition to going through the site, contacting peers, talking to folks. It's comes in a PDF format to basically then share internally or just for your own consumption.
And what would you say to those who say, I guess maybe let me back up. How would you compare and contrast the reports that you guys provide versus sort of the traditional analyst's report, where you have people who are, companies like Gartner and Forrester and others that would provide data about various vendors? How should people view what you provide versus what they provide, or is it an and instead of a versus, if that question makes sense?
Right, no, definitely, it's a great question. I would say the way to think of a G2 Crowd is that we are playing into what the human, what the traditional human need is, which is, another fancy way is big data, right? Which basically means I kind of want to know what my peers are using that actually have used the software. So I'd like to get that input, and because the more feedback from my peers I can get, the better, more data points. And if I can add other social paradigms to it, then it's kind of the big data angle. That's a much more powerful view for me as a sophisticated buyer, or frankly any buyer, than one person's opinion. And that's the way to think about it. Traditional analyst reports are one person's opinion that's based on a fairly small sample size. And here's the other thing. That person probably has not used all these CRM software that we have in this grid personally. So contrast this back to G2 Crowd. 1,000+ people that have used these types of software expressing their opinion, and we're using big data on top of that. As a buyer, that's kind of what I want.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, because if you just get a referral from somebody or a recommendation from someone, that might be really useful, but they may have not used any competitors and don't know the whole scope. That's good information.
Yep.
And then the final question is, how do you keep, because Salesforce is obviously the giant in that CRM group, and in the call tracking space, for example, I mean, we're far from the largest just because we're new. How do you what's the best way to put this? How do you stop just the sheer numbers of the large clients from dominating your rankings just because there's more of them? I mean, obviously there's going to be more people that use Salesforce than a new CRM that may be better. But because Salesforce has so many users, they're of course going to dominate the review sites. How do you manage that? What would you say about that?
Right. Actually, I mean, it works fairly well. It's done through our proprietary algorithm in our engine. And so if you look at this grid specifically, you actually will notice that the high performers, that's a very good category to be looking at for solutions that are up and coming, because they have very high customer sat, and they're much smaller than Salesforce and Microsoft, but they're represented very well here as basically high customer sat, smaller in scale. And so if you look at companies like Workbooks, Nimble, Base CRM, I would be checking them out.
Absolutely. Yeah, that
So
makes
my
a lot
point
of
is
sense.
they don't have the same amount of volume of reviews or scale of organization, but that's okay. We were able to represent that. And that's the beauty of it, because back to traditional analysts, a lot of these high performers would not be covered because they're just not big enough for that process. A human being can only absorb so many vendors, right? And
Right.
what we're saying is that's okay, because we're looking to the crowd to expose that. And so we're meeting with large vendors all the time that are looking to us and saying, hey, G2 Crowd, how can you help me get an edge in buying the next up-and-coming software? And if you read traditional sort of reports, you won't find them. Here you will. So back to your questions, because our algorithm is designed to do exactly that.
That's great. Well, and the other thing we've experienced too as a sort of startup is, you know, if you want to get it mentioned in a major analyst report, you better be prepared to fork over a substantial amount of money. And, you know, for a startup, that's not always possible. So I think what you've done here is sort of crowdsourced, taken the review concept and taken it to software, which I think is great. So compliments to you. Well, good. We had a lot of good questions. Let's see if there's any more flowing in here. In the meantime, what I'll do is, again, remind you that this webinar has been recorded. You'll get an email tomorrow morning, everybody, that has the recording attached to it, so you can click on that recording and it'll play. It'll be a link. And then you'll also get a link to our blog where we'll recap this webinar a little bit. And then, Matt, any final thoughts before we conclude today?
I mean, the final thought is basically use the crowd, because that's where intelligence is in the crowdsourced user reviews and big data. And it's there for you to take advantage of and also contribute. If you know software well and you've experience, contribute back to the community. And this way, we're all empowered to make better decisions. And the vendors also will appreciate that, because it tells their story. If they're investing hard to make your project successful, that's the best way to let everyone else know as well. So that'll be my last sort of call to action. And thanks for the time. Enjoyed chatting with you, and have a great rest of the week.
Thank you, and thanks, Matt, for joining us. Just a reminder, everybody, you can view this webinar recording. Go to the email that you get tomorrow morning, or just go to logmycalls.com/webinar. You can view this webinar as well as literally dozens and dozens of others without filling out a form. Just click on the record or watch the webinar button, and you'll be able to watch tons of webinars about various marketing topics that are all awesome. So thanks again, everybody. Have a wonderful day and weekend, and we'll talk soon.